in. Welcome. Come on in here. Come on in here. Matter of fact, let's get it going right. Um, hey Google, play Curtis Mayfield. People get ready. Yeah, yeah, I'm feeling that.
Okay,
I'm
People Get
feeling
Ready
that.
by Curtis Mayfield. Here it is on
Yeah.
Spotify.
Sometimes you gotta set the tone. You gotta set the tone. Sometimes we're in a very excitable space, depending on what's going on in your life. Sometimes you're a little more relaxed. But when you enter in this particular realm, we want to make sure that you get ready. We make sure that you settle on in. Get ready for the show that's about to happen. Get ready for this train that's about to go off. You just get on board. Hold on. Let me stop it right there before the video gets flagged. Hello, America. Hello, world. Hello, you. It is your new best friend, Cashmere, California. And this is the Pod is Good podcast, episode 20. Episode 20. Pod is good. And all the time, if you know, you know. If you don't, keep listening. You will find out. Ladies and gentlemen, another incredibly engaging show is about to get underway. It has begun, whether you know it or not. In the studio, I have one of my guys. We had this incredible fireside conversation just a few short months ago, and I told him when I get the channel going, when the show is underway, you got to get on. You got to come and talk to the people. You got to share your insight. You got to share your life's work. You got to share your perception. Oftentimes we talk about wanting to know how to do better in the future, how to get to the places that we want to be. But we all know that you can't get to a better future unless you truly understand your past, unless you truly understand the dynamics and the strides that you, your family, your people, your culture have made to get you to the place that you're at. So with that, we try to bring on voices that shed light on those spaces, voices that see today from a different perspective than you might because of their years of experience of watching culture evolve, watching America evolve. And today is no different. So settle in. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're here. Please share the broadcast. If you're unable to share the broadcast, tell me in the chat. I'll do what I can to figure things out for you. We do have the show streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitch. And very shortly, all of these episodes will be available audio only on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and any other place that you get your favorite podcast. And we are hoping that this becomes one of your favorites. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further delay or obstruction, let's get the show underway. Today, my guy is going to speak with us about African American history, a lot of things in Black culture. I told him I wanted to talk about the problem that we have with our people in prison. I wanted to talk a little politics with him. And I wanted to go back and kind of do a brief overview of what he's seen in America during his life so we can get a greater understanding and appreciation for why he has the things going on in his present time and why he works so diligently to pour into youth to help them forge ahead to the future. My guy walking into the studio, my man, Mr. Brother Eric Clay. How are you, sir?
I'm great now. For those who don't know, we had some technical difficulties earlier, but
Yes.
we've overcome them by the
Got
grace
it
of
taken care
God.
of. Yes,
And
sir.
I'm just happy to be here. In the pod with James this afternoon. Uh, my guy, somebody who I've grown to appreciate. Did not get background is that didn't get an opportunity to watch this young man grow up, but have watched him become a man of stature, a father, a good husband, and somebody who's willing to um, give back to the community. Uh,
Yeah.
just a all around good person, and just happy to be here to just delight in what it is that he has to offer. So I'm going to give whatever input I can. I heard all the accolades and all of that. Let everyone know first off, I'm no expert in anything. That's my disclaimer. Uh, and that I am a lifelong learner,
Yes.
long
Yes.
learner. And
As we all should be.
that's my claim to fame.
As we all should be. And as they say, each one teach one. And so that is what we are here to do, is to grow from one another. And our experiences are sometimes more than enough. More than
That's
enough when they're shared, more than enough to create growth in the next man. So let's start first with Brother Eric. Where were you born?
Well, I was born in what they would call Northern California. I was born in Martinez, California, and raised in Richmond, California, which is
Hello.
the Bay Area.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Bay Area.
Yes, yes, Richmond. I know it. I know it well. I was on that bridge that connects what is it, Richmond and Vallejo?
Right, right. Richmond.
Constantly,
That's
constantly.
the Carquenes Bridge. More
Carquinez
people,
Bridge.
yeah, and more people would be more familiar with the Golden Gate Bridge that
Right.
links Marin to San Francisco, and the Oakland San Francisco Bay Bridge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Tons of bridges out there. So much water. People don't realize it's not just the Golden Gate.
Well,
You gotta get on the.
San Francisco's a hub, and it's a peninsula. So, I mean, talking history, I mean, when they didn't have bridges, they had to use ferries. So,
Right.
the bridges connect all the water lands together. And there's about seven major bridges that have to be crossed, from various different areas in the Bay Area. So, and we're happy for the bridge workers when there used to be, and they don't have toll workers anymore. Took all
Right.
the
Right.
toll workers away, made everything automated, which is part of. I'm sorry, my hands in, which is part of progress that has
Part
taken
of the growth.
jobs away. You know,
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's like it adds one one job for one technician that just looks at all the coding and the software, and then takes away 100 jobs for the people actually there doing the work.
right. Let me make some
So
adjustments to my screen real quick.
no worries, no worries. So, but we talk about bridges, and speaking of the Bay Bridge, it reminds me of the day, the scary moment where I was shaking around in Fairfield, California, which, if people don't know, is not just around the corner from San Francisco. It's a what, maybe 50, 60 miles,
Round
something like
about 50 miles, Fairfield to San Francisco.
around 50 miles. So 50 miles away, laying on my couch. At 13 years old, my couch is shaking, and I actually thought that my dad was playing a trick on me or something. I thought he was messing with the couch, and I'm just kind of swaying back and forth on the couch. Get up, realize he's not even in the room, and as you know, that day the San Francisco earthquake happens and destroys the Bay Bridge. Do you remember where you were on that day?
I think everyone in the Bay Area can account for where they were on that particular day,
Yes.
October of '89, and
Uh-huh.
it was a devastating day. I had just gotten off from work. I worked in Dublin, which is inland from uh, east of San Francisco, and I was standing and pumping gas at at a gas station, at a local gas station. I just gotten off work, and I saw the whole uh, structure start to shake and move, and I felt the earthquake. And being in the Bay Area and being, above 60 years old now, I've experienced a few shakers, you know, uh, in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But this one was particularly, it went long, and it was like rolling. It was
Yes.
unusual, and it kind of took me like, oh, an earthquake. But I did not know at the time the devastation that that particular earthquake had caused.
Right. Right.
Living in Oakland at the time, and when I got to residence, I was living at my uncle's house, kind of house sitting. And when I got to the residence, the neighbors were saying, I said, "Did you guys feel the earthquake?" They said, "Yeah, man, the bridge fell." I said, I took it jokingly. They said, "No, the bridge fell."
Right.
And from there, started tuning into the news, saw the devastation, and saw people actually in panic who were still trying to cross the bridge. I remember seeing one car that took a nosedive because the way that the Bay Bridge was structured, and also um, the what we used to call Highway 17 uh, in um, uh, in Oakland, they
Mhm.
were on top of each other. The bridges were constructed where you had eastbound uh, lanes going one way, and they had built on top of that bridge the westbound traffic. And so we had two bridges that had collapsed. One was the Oakland San Francisco Bay Bridge, and the other was the La Peralta, I think. But yeah, it was devastation for weeks to come. I know some people who had loved ones who perished in
Mhm.
in that earthquake, in the bridge situation, and yeah, day that you will never forget.
Yeah. You hit it right on the head. Nobody from the Bay Area forgets that day. And actually, I got it wrong. I said I was 13. I was actually more like 8 or 9 in '89. I think I was thinking of the Northridge earthquake. I believe that was in '93, if I recall correctly. Um, you still hear me?
Okay, I lost you for a moment.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay, so pretty much you lived in the Bay Area or Northern California your whole life. Did you ever live in any other states or any other countries? Can you hear me? Test, test.
Lost my audio, so
You lost your audio? All right, give us a second, y'all, real quick. We're gonna
you
figure
have to
this out.
reconnect.
Uh, yeah, yeah, let's do that. All right, let me pull him off. Some more technical difficulties. We've had that today. It's happened a few times, but we'll get it together. We'll get it together. Um, yeah, I don't know if anybody else out there was around the Bay Area during that '89 earthquake, but oh my, it was a shaker. It's one of them. It'll You'll feel like that's enough earthquake for the rest of my life. I don't need no more of that. Let me tell him to disconnect and reconnect. See if that helps. But yeah, I remember it vividly. You don't remember a ton of childhood moments like that, but that one stands out. That one stands out. You talking like I said, 50 miles away from the epicenter of the earthquake. And it's not like I just kind of felt, some small shaking. I literally thought my dad was moving, like sliding the couch back and forth, to and fro, from head to toe. and it just kept going and kept going and kept going, and all to find out that it was just an earthquake. How's that? Any better? All right. So now I don't have you. I don't have you. You can hear me though. You can hear me? All right, we're gonna get it figured out, y'all. I do apologize for the blank spots, but you don't bring on a guest and don't hear them. We got to make sure our guests are visible and audible at all times, and if not, we got to bring out the tech team and get it figured out so we can get back on. This is almost like if Beyonce is in the middle of performing and the mic goes out, that's when you're gonna see the sound crew. And the
Okay.
sound crew got to come on and get it right.
So can you hear me now, James?
I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Can you see me?
I can see you perfectly.
All right, we're good to go.
We back in business. So you pretty much lived in the Bay Area your whole life. My last question was, have you lived in any other states or countries?
That is a firm no. I'm
Cali kid.
Born and raised in the Bay Area. I've traveled more as an adult than I did. Now, when I was 15 years old, I did a cross-country trip with my parents, my mom and my dad, in a blue camper, open road camper, and we went from California to New York in a camper. My dad was a truck driver by trade, so he loved to be on the road. And we had major stops in Cleveland, where my mom had a relative, an aunt, and in Chicago, where my father had relatives. And that was a trip that I'll never forget. I got a lot of education from one of my dad's cousins. She was pretty much well-rounded. At 15 years old, she gave me a book called The Rich and the Super Rich, which basically talked about the economic giants of from the Rockefellers to the DuPonts to the Morgans, and it was just an engaging book that sent me on the journey to talk about to learn about economics in America. The Getty, and it was just that was an eye opener for me, because at 15 years old, you're not thinking about much other than what you can get, what kind of trouble you can get into as an adolescent. She also.
And what was that book called again?
I'm sorry.
What was that book called again?
The Rich and the Super Rich.
The Rich and the Super Rich. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's a reminder that there's levels.
There are definitely levels. We understand that there's the 1%, and then there's the rest of us.
Right.
Scary. Certain aspects of this world and this country, especially in this country, that have made a great divide in the economic trends of this world, the divisions in this world, and also just certain systemic things that have occurred, whether they're racially motivated or whether they are motivated by economic classism, and things of that nature. So those are certain things that we talked about. You and I talked about some of those things last time that we were together on our
I mean, even
fireside.
And you saying, and you bringing up economic classism, that makes me it reminds me of Tulsa, and so this we kind of got into this a couple episodes ago with a guy. We were talking about the conversation of reparations, and in that conversation we discussed what happened with Greenwood and how it wasn't. It's one that's talked about, but it's not the only time that happened. It's not the only time that America, if you will, moved in on a thriving Black community and destroyed it. Like, what, from you studying it from when you started at such a young age, why did that happen?
Well, first off, my background, as I said, I'm not an expert or anything, but I am a lifelong learner. One of the things that I just talking culturally, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. And I grew up in California. So there was a lot of things that happened in the deep South, Jim Crow and such, that I wasn't aware of, just, we didn't talk about it in school. You didn't learn about those things in school. When we talked about American history, we briefly talked about the slavery, Civil War. There were certain people that you studied. You can probably know they probably did the same thing throughout the time that you were in school. I mean, we learned about Benjamin Banneker.
Right.
We learned about Crispus Attucks, first person to fall during the American Revolution. He was a Black man. Then we learned a little bit about Frederick Douglass, and we learned a little bit about Harriet Tubman. People who history just could not close the book on, because they were so impactful. Then we learned a little bit about George Washington Carver, only one of thousands of inventors that had helped shape America. So there were a lot of, unless if you were in the South, from what I learned later on, if you were growing up in the South, in the segregated South, you had Black educators, and Black educators educated Black children. And so coming out of the South, you would probably know more about the Black involvement in American history than you would in some place like California. It's strange, which brings to mind the HBCUs. A lot of people have talked about their educations, going to Black colleges, and the cultural wealth that they have accumulated because of going to school at an HBCU. And and in some ways it makes you envious, because of the fact we as Americans, and as African Americans and Black Americans, if you will, have contributed so much, and our history has been so whitewashed, to a point that you have certain states such as Florida, even right now, where you have DeSantis, who's trying to let's say redirect and correct history, as how involved Black Americans have been since slavery. But we were talking about Tulsa. We were talking about economic differences and how those things have how they took place. My understanding, Greenwood was divided into two cultures. They had the white culture and they had the Black culture, and Blacks in Greenwood were striving. It was said that it would take a year for $1 to circulate out of Greenwood, because they kept the money in there. They had thriving, professionals. They had grocery stores, and they had doctors, and they even had pilots, and they had a small airport. Um, that's why it got dubbed the name Black Wall Street.
Right.
Who were striving in that community, not so
Right.
the other side of the wall that that separated the two cultures. Um, we know what happened. Some of the brief history. Young man was in the elevator, need to go to the restroom. The only restroom, was located on the top of a department store. He had to drive. He had to take the elevator up. Um, from what we understand from the history, a woman, a white woman, that said that she had either been assaulted or something, and they arrested the young man, which devastated the community. One thing led to another. Blacks came over to protect and make sure that nothing was going to happen, that they weren't going to string up the young man. Um, Whites were offended. One thing led to another, but the brunt of the devastation was done to the Black community. They were burned out. They were murdered. And they never got anything back from, and the community was never built back up because insurances wouldn't pay out on properties and things of that nature. That's one way of devastating the community. We understand after slavery that Reconstruction took place. Amendments were made to the Constitution. Slavery had ended, but yet, they still, because they were still devastated by the economic growth that the Civil War had placed on the South's loss. There, they enacted laws that would lead to Black imprisonment at large numbers. Loitering laws. You were loitering. Let's say you didn't have a job. Let's say that you were waiting for a job. You could get picked up in Jim Crow law, in Jim Crow states, and you would become a prisoner, and they make you work for, basically that was slave labor again.
Jeez.
A lot of people
Still going on.
A lot of people migrated, north, but I mean, racism is everywhere, so we look at how people, how communities were constructed in the north with tenements and things of that nature, and a lot of people living on top of one another. But if the jobs aren't there, then the community fails. And we know that prison labor has allowed America to strive just as slavery did.
Yeah, yeah.
And
there's a direct pipeline to it.
Direct pipeline to miseducation of Black people, or education of Black people, which can lead to crime, which can lead to being in prison without proper representation. Things of that nature. So there are a lot of things that have contributed to
a lot of factors.
Absolutely. So,
but it's so sad. We go over these stories, and you have a small moment that somehow in the blink of an eye just erupts into a much bigger issue. So the situation in Tulsa with the kid being accused by the white lady turns into an entire district getting destroyed. It's like how, and so there's still that feeling of like okay, I know the story, but then I know the outcome. And the outcome is so much bigger than that. You wonder, was this being plotted on long before it happened? Were there threats of this happening long? I mean, because, you know, immediately everyone had the tools and he burned down a whole city. You know, they didn't have Amazon back then. They couldn't get all this stuff next day delivery, but somehow they got everything they needed in you know what feels like a moment's notice, and did, you know, the unthinkable. You know, I've seen people mad before, but come on.
Well, James, um, one of the things that slavery created was, first off, there were two economies. And if we look at slavery and we look at how people lived in that day, there were the plantation owners, and then there were the workers. Now
Right.
there was the slave labor, but then what was the white labor? The white labor consisted of, if they weren't indentured slaves, which meant that they were contracted to give service for a certain time and then they would buy their freedom. Then you also had overseers, and overseers didn't really economically um, do any better than the slaves, you know.
Hmm.
So at the end of the slavery, you had whites who were no longer employed as far as being overseers of slaves, but then you had blacks who were newly acquired freedom.
Hmm.
Economically, they were probably in the same boat. Now, if you look at what we call white privilege today,
Hmm.
stems from way back then, where you had white people who figured the only thing that separates me from the blacks is the fact that I'm white, which creates better opportunity.
Yeah.
Also, uh, you had sharecropping, but you still had laws that prohibited blacks from doing certain things, whether it was going in the front door, whether it was walking on the sidewalk, having to look down when white people approach. Uh, there were certain laws, and there were laws that were drafted. You know, that, for all I know, still on the books in some of the in some towns.
Right. And if not on the books of the actual pages, definitely on the books of some hearts.
Right. And then you had and then you had the uprising of the Ku Klux Klan, you know,
Huh.
which was also in a way, and trying to keep one's culture down, one race down, and laws um, that protected them from whether they were part of a lynch mob or shootings, or I mean, you can just look at the devastation in the history of America and see how uh, one culture has taken another one down, and
Huh.
those attitudes still exist. So instead of people working alongside of each other who are economically distressed, uh, we use race to still divide.
Huh. So it sounds like you're saying American culture overall had just turned into a pressure cooker. You know, you'd had these two factions during slavery that created one dynamic, and then slavery ends, and then that creates a different dynamic, and those are now pushing against each other because there might be people from the old traditions that kind of wish things were still the way they were, because maybe they're not as well off, or their families aren't as well off as they were when they had that free labor. You got the other side fighting to continue to get more freedoms because they don't want to go back, and they know what America's done to them. Now you have Greenwood that starts to blossom. They're doing well. And then, like you said, on the other side of the wall, they're not doing so well. And so all that just kind of builds up, and then you get these explosions.
You get
No
exposure.
pun intended.
Yeah, yeah. You know that we have uh, cultures that do not do well, um, for whatever purposes, for whatever reasons. I'm not saying that the blacks that strive were smarter. I'm not saying that but maybe they had more resources, and they learned to utilize their resources. I think part of that is that you may have had educated people in that community who may have gotten their education somewhere, or had gone to southern colleges that with education, and they learn to give back to their community. Uh,
Yeah.
and you may not have that same thing striving on the other side, but tension, as you said, tensions grow. And it's the same thing with race riots or riots today. It was the same thing in Watts. It was the same thing in Detroit. It was the same thing, when you have economic disparities. Uh, People wonder, why do people tear up their communities? Well, uh, I, I heard one educator say it wasn't that they were tearing up their communities. They didn't own anything there.
Hmm.
I mean, unfortunately, if a person who is non-black opens up a store in a black community that's seeing economic disparity, and they get looted, it may be because the people feel that they don't own anything in that community. So it happened there, and I think the same thing happened in Tulsa. Only um, racially, it was not what it is that we see. I think it happened in I think it happened in, when the Irish came here and they weren't accepted. You know, they had gangs. And I think it happened when the Italians came, and uh, oftentimes you see various different communities of different cultures clashing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if art, imitates life, or life imitates art, you can see it on the screens. One of my greatest, uh, one of my greatest type of entertainment growing up were watching, watching television and watching musicals and things of that nature. One of my favorite musicals was West Side Story, and
Hmm.
we know the premise of West Side Story. It was,
Yeah.
whites against Puerto Ricans. You know,
True.
built in a love story built in, but it was still racial. It's still racial.
Absolutely.
You know, so uh,
Yeah.
again, the life imitate art, or art imitate life. We have that devastation, but most of it is built and based on the realisms of different cultures clashing, whether it's economic, or whether it's social, whether it's racial, uh,
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just part of American culture. That's so true, because it feels like it's still going on today in our southern borders. You're kind of watching it unfold for Mexico as well, um, in different ways, in ways that it doesn't unfold for uh, other countries that make their way here. So with all that happening, obviously that was before your time, but I'm pretty sure you knew about it. At a certain point in your life, you started to learn about it. Maybe parents, grandparents talked about it. But you lived in Northern California, and so you have an interesting perspective, at least to my eye, because most Black people that I know that are truthfully above the age of maybe 20 to 30 that are in California that I meet are from some other place. And so their viewpoint of America, of economics, of racism, of all those things are usually from some other place. They're usually looking at it from an Alabama perspective, Missouri, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, some Midwest or Southern state. And so because of that, their conversations or their stories even about their parents' conversations with them are very entrenched in, the Southern way of racism. What did you experience that in Northern California when you were a kid?
As a matter of fact, you do experience it, but I think that racism is more, subtle and more covert than overt,
Mm-hmm.
in America. I mean, as I got older, by the time I got into high school, we were having our own race riots. I mean, I went to El Cerrito High School, which is basically a suburb. Uh,
Yeah.
I was bused there in the sense. I caught public transportation uh, to get to my high school. You know,
Wow.
so our the numbers of blacks that attended the high school that I attended was not.
All right, we lost you briefly. Lost you briefly. Okay, I'm pretty sure something happened. Maybe he got a call. Maybe he needs to put the phone on the charger. One of the two. We'll get him back. We'll get him back. Anyone listening, appreciate you guys being here. See you in the chat. Trying to respond as I can. Please share the broadcast. This is about to develop into a pretty interesting conversation. If you can't tell, this is I know he keeps saying that he's not an expert, but here we're not necessarily trying to talk to experts. We're talking to people that not only have a great experience to share, but they paid attention through that experience. That's a big deal because a lot of us can go through things, but did you take the moment to really embrace what was going on so that you can, um, choose what to do with it? You know what I mean? Our experiences are designed to shape us. Brother Clay, you good?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry
All right.
for the brief interruption.
All good. Don't even worry about it. Um, yeah, so you're saying you guys actually had your own race wars or race riots going to El Cerrito.
Yeah, and it was impactful because we were just coming out. I graduated in 1977. I know that's a long time for you. That's still ancient history for you. But I remember being in maybe the third or fourth grade when Martin Luther King was assassinated,
Oh,
and
yeah,
so we weren't that far removed from what was to take place next. Um,
yeah,
who were our leaders going to be? The world was still rocking and reeling um, from the assassination of JFK, and then
okay,
King, and then Robert Kennedy. Which all was impactful. You have to, and Medgar Evers, didn't impact us as much. We didn't hear as much. And me as a youngster, didn't know the impact that Medgar Evers had on civil rights and things of that nature. So,
huh,
um, I mean, in history, we didn't learn about Emmett Till, you know,
right,
and
at
things of
all.
that. So, uh, but in California, we had our own brand of racism. I remember my dad telling me how he had put in an application. My father was a union worker. He worked for Teamster. He was a driver. He later on, but he was a warehouse worker. Um, but I remember him speaking to me about having put in an application and maybe had left something in the office, and literally walked in and saw the person throwing his application in the garbage can. You know, so it existed. It wasn't like racism didn't exist in California, but by the
Yeah,
time I got to school, um, yeah, we may have had little clashes, you know, that were race related, but
right,
You know, we also moved quickly to. I remember being called out of class and um, um, I guess selected as a youth that they thought might be able to come together and try to um, find out what our differences were and whether or not they put a plan together after our little summit. You know, uh, I don't remember anything coming out of it. Things just kind of went back to the way that they were. You know,
Wow. Wow.
so
So
it was a. But you know, I mean, those are your experiences. I mean, and I mean, look, um, experiences like that help you along the way as you mature and what you're going to encounter. You know, on the job and in life itself. You know, those are the kind of things uh, that set you up for, you know, being a life learner and also giving back, as you said, giving back to the community, which is why, you know, engaging with youth and um, sowing into the next generation is so important to me.
yeah, and it seems like it makes us very durable. You know what I mean? Like I do believe that at our heart, you know, we are some of the most warm and loving people, and so to have endured some of the world's greatest atrocities, it's interesting that we're still, you know, we're still so cool with people. You know what I mean? It's like we're so quick to brush it. I mean, not completely brush it under the rug, but to try to move past it and get to a better place. And we're the ones with the heal the world songs, and you know, trying to kind of bring us back together and not, you know, push us apart.
Yeah, a lot of that is, I mean, and if you look at our culture, I mean, we assimilate,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
more and try to be divisive, you know. It's something that I think it's not being docile or anything like that, but you know, I think that we recognize the fact that, I mean, if you want to build something, it's better to, you know, to get along with people than to try to divide away from people, you know.
yeah,
But the greater culture does not, you know, does not all see that, you know. And a lot of people, a lot of them, I've been hearing about statistics about, you know, the white culture becoming the minority for decades, you
hmm,
know. That's a lot of the reasons why immigration laws are passed to try to stymie growth of immigration in America. Um, that's why a lot of politics, you know, is built around, you know, the quote unquote make America great culture, you
yeah,
know, um, which has nothing to do, I believe, with economic power. It has to do with, you know, the racial imbalance in America, and a lot that to do with keeping uh, whites as the majority in America.
hmm, hmm. So okay, I don't disagree with that at all. I don't think anybody would.
Would
And so, I
have a
mean,
whole
you know,
lot of people who would disagree with what it is that I just said. Now, whether to back up what it is that I mean, their disagreement would be something totally different. But I mean, facts are facts. I
yeah,
mean, you see, and you hear, and you know, if you have an intelligent mind, then I mean, it's hard to sugarcoat what somebody is saying. I mean, they have it coming straight from you say, straight from the horse's mouth.
right, right. I mean, but that's an interesting thing to say or to point out that we assimilate because we do. We're like, we will just go to we'll find ourselves in a new space and we'll make our adjustments and then we'll still thrive within that new construct. You know, it kind of made me think about, you know, the whole conversation about the N word,
Right.
how it was something that was, you know, obviously created to demean and degrade us as people. And whether you agree with it or not, is a different, case by case scenario. But we took something like that and found a way to assimilate with it. You know what I mean? It was like we really did. That's almost one of the ultimate assimilations that I could think of, from slavery to freedom. Again, not saying that it was the right or wrong choice to do so, but the idea of taking something that was meant to this and then using it and pretty much minimizing, or at least mitigating an essential amount of its power, we did that.
Well, yeah, I mean, for some that would be their argument. I don't think that was their intent, though. I think that we used it because it was it was a derogatory term. So on the bottom, we assimilated to the derogatory term. You know, um, it some say well, it's a way of embracing one another. They can put the "my" in front of it or what have you.
Yeah.
But I mean, but why associate ourselves with a derogatory term? Why can't we be kings?
But here's a better question. Sorry, not a better question. I gotta stop doing that. Here's another question. Why does anybody? Because there's an episode, and I'm gonna have you on it too, because I want it to be a panel conversation. But basically, the topic is going to be called "Why the N Word," because it's not just us. It's like I've heard Asians use it, I've heard Mexicans use it, white
But
people use it, Indians use it. It's
but
like why
yeah,
why is everybody trying to be so close to that word?
because our culture is rich.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, like black gold rich, like oil rich. In the sense that we are God has created us to be a creative and charismatic people. And
Mm.
so, even I mean, they didn't start using that until hip hop language and becoming uncensored and um, and that language being available to everyone, and the hip hop generation utilizing that way that people started to assimilate to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that sense, and then what do? We ban certain cultures from using the word. You better not say that word, and things of that nature.
Do you remember, uh, if you have a story, since you did have racism in the Bay Area back then, um, do you remember the first time that someone called you the N word in a?
Um, Not directly to my face, no.
Hmm.
Not until and later, and it was, and it wasn't even somebody who was who was white, and I never had anybody white. Now they might do it in attitude, or they might do it in another way, but never. It was a Hispanic brother who actually used the word, and um, growing up, I had different groups of people that I grew up with. I had certain friends that I hung out with. If we wanted to go, if we wanted to go to a neighborhood party or a club or something, and then I had certain groups of one of my best friends who he was more towards the white culture. I mean, I mean, we wrote music together. He played guitar, and he played Hendrix and Jeff
Wow,
Beck, and
that's good stuff.
a lot of his friends were white and Hispanic, and
Yeah.
the Hispanic guy, he had told me about this guy. He's like, yeah, he says that all the time, and I don't like it. I'm not gonna fight you over it, but why in the world are you using the word?
Right.
And
Right.
it's not, but if you're gonna use it, it's not even worth an argument, really. You know, is how
Right.
wasn't. I need to defend myself of it because I never looked at myself like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand that. Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation because it's like on the face of it, it seems like a very obvious thing. You know, people that oppressed you called you this name. What would you do with that name once you weren't oppressed by them anymore? I'd never see it again. I'd never say it again. Conversation over. You know,
Yeah, and
that's how you'd expect the conversation to go, but it's not that simple.
I'm just one person who just never really word. Um, I don't use it toward brothers, but I have, friends, relatives who have, used it, and that's just not, it's just not part of my repertoire in the
Right,
sense. So,
right.
and taking you back to I was saying about my earlier influences and my entertainment and things. I mean, being movies and things of that nature. One of my favorite movies was The Godfather. You know,
Mm,
but
yeah,
and in The Godfather, they used derogatory terms toward black people. They
they
used it.
definitely do.
They talked about we didn't have a soul. They talked about selling in our communities, things of that nature, and that was the Sicilian Italian, mafia, you know, that that the movie was based upon,
Yeah,
So the author, uh, I'm sure, when Coppola took it from Puzo's book, it was in the book. It was in. That's why they didn't take it out. And they didn't look at, well, we're gonna offend this culture by saying it.
true,
You know?
true. And we continue to do that with art, you know, telling these different stories that show the complications between different races, which is, it feels like it's uh, an easy out in America because it's such a melting pot of so many cultures that you're bound to get a large audience of at least two groups once you do that. You know what I mean? There's like even Django. It's like you're tapping into some cultural emotion, and you're at very least going to get two groups that are like interested to see how do you play this out, how is this story told, how am I represented in this story.
Yeah, I think and it's interesting that you brought that particular movie up because I mean the controversy was I think it may have been the NAACP or somebody who was opposed to them having the N word in that movie, which is a
Right.
no. Who's the director? Um,
What's his name? What's his name? What's his
he's
name?
say the other guy, Pulp Fiction guy. Yeah, but
Yeah. Uh, Tarantino.
Tarantino, right? So,
Tarantino.
he's and I mean, basically the movie was about. I mean, it was a slave era movie, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
language was in that sense the language was appropriate. You know,
True.
it was a slave era movie, so if you want to bring some realism into it, then it was appropriate. How much of it
Yeah.
to use, that's I mean, a lot of it might have been cut. I mean, left on the editing cutting room floor. So we don't know. He said, okay, they're gonna complain about it, so I'll take these 20 references to it out, these 200 references out.
And what are your thoughts on that? Like, you know, if you are gonna create a timepiece that's supposed to encapsulate a certain moment in this piece of art, whether it be a movie, TV show, song, what are your thoughts on how real it gets? You know, should it be edited or trying to be sensitive to today's world, or should it give you exactly what it was then because that is the time in which it's being reconstructed from?
Well, I think it depends upon the audience because the audience that you're trying to reach. I mean, we still have ratings on movies. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's going to be a PG movie, or a general audience movie, you're not going to put the language in there. But if you're trying to be, real to the time, you know,
Yeah.
uh, then uh, you just have to you have to choose. I mean, as an artist, because now we're talking about art. And I mean, as an artist, I think the movie Till, which I have not seen, but
Yeah.
they had a precursor on there that said that there will be no violent depictions in this movie, you know, and they chose not to show. I haven't seen the movie, so when they say violent depictions, I'm assuming that they didn't show the death.
Couldn't have.
Did you see the movie?
I have not seen the movie, but you're
Yeah.
you're exactly right. There's no way you show the moment of the open casket, which his mom requested, without showing violence. That was her whole reason for saying no. I wanted an open casket so they can
Yeah.
see what they did.
But they may have shown they may have shown the incident that led up to it. But from what if you say no violent depictions towards people in this movie, then that, without having seen the movie, that moves me to say that they did not show the death scene. They didn't show him dying, they didn't show him being attacked, or anything like. So it's up to the artist
Right,
to depict how they wanted. I'm sure it's still a moving movie.
right,
You
right,
know, Glory was a moving movie about a black infantry unit that fought in the Civil War.
right.
I remember Denzel being whipped in that movie. You know,
Mm.
for stealing some shoes.
And then the tear, that everybody talks about.
Here, right? Which
Everybody
was
talks about that tear.
hey, but one of
Right,
America's, and but there was violence shown, and I believe that I mean, uh, you know, based upon what it is that they were trying to draw from the audience, then it may have been necessary. But I mean, going back to the civil rights movement, there was a reason why the civil rights movement had so much impact and was able to change a generation, is because of the depictions of the news that was being shown on the evening news every night. The
mm,
racism, the dogs being sicked on protesters, uh, the fire hoses being turned on innocent people,
mm.
with on protesters, because they were innocent of protesting. They were exercising their rights, you
Right,
know.
right.
But if not for I- if not for the depiction of of help me, um well, if let's say if not for the depiction of those people being assaulted, by law enforcement, in the deep south,
Mm.
to change, I don't think civil rights would have been changed the way that it was. you know
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then and today, what's the equivalent to that today, is cell phone footage. you know
Yeah. But then today, it's crazy though, because you're spot on, and today there's more evidence of the wrongs that are done to not only black people but other people. But
right.
for the sake of our conversation, uh, we we've seen plenty of footage. Unfortunately, sometimes um, you know law enforcement provided footage um, of things that happen to black people here on American soil. And also, we've seen justice still not find its way to the forefront. And so the question, is when that didn't happen back then, in your Emmett Till situations, in your um, Rosa Parks moments, in different times of our history during that time, you had leaders that stood up. You had leaders that made the public and the people in power, at least even for a moment, to have to recognize that this is a problem. Whether they did anything about it, that's a different story. But they organized and found a way to make sure that the problem was heard. What black leaders today do we have that the youth can look to for leadership in these moments when they're scrolling through TikTok and seeing some issue, or scrolling through Instagram and seeing some more footage of some cop doing this, or whatever the scenario is, and feeling like, well, where is justice? Who are the leaders?
And it's an interesting question. And let me just say that because I'm not of this particular generation, and I know millennials have various different, people that they look to, and they have their various different um, news outlets. Very different from when I was growing up. When I was growing up, there were three networks. There was NBC, ABC, and CBS. And then PBS, public broadcast.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Now you have all these cable outlets, and like you said, you have social media outlets. So I think that, and all of that is being used to shape people's attitudes. You got the Breakfast Club, which is a very open forum. You know, uh,
Yeah.
you have you have the Shade Room. Um, but as far as making differences, I mean, you can look at Benjamin Crump. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who is spending their life in the trenches to try to bring justice to the injustices that are being uh, perpetrated on African Americans in this country right now.
Yeah.
There are others within that realm who are doing things. You have young leaders who are coming out who are running for office today and are being elected to Congress and being elected to Senate, and I'm sure also being elected on their in their hometowns and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
you haven't heard about them now. Uh, I'm pretty sure you will. Someone will rise to the whether they will have a meteoric rise like Barack Obama did, who um, rose to the greatest office in the world. If you think about the fact that America is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, then its leader has to have the greatest office in the world.
True.
So
Makes sense.
with that said, and I'm not going to get into the various different branches, the judicial and the congressional and the presidential and things of that nature. But uh, he had a great impact on American society, and I think that because of his impact, a lot of our young leaders are going to be coming from there. And figure, if he was able to rise that high, why can't I?
Hmm. Hmm. So President Obama is a great example of, a modern day leader that looks like us, that knows, what our life and struggles are, and um, speaks our language. Coming out of Chicago, knows our communities very well. There's obviously, as we learn after his term, there are people that felt indifferent about his time in office, though. So thinking about everything that we've talked about in our history, and kind of, as we threw out a small smorgasbord of leaders and whatnot from our culture, do you believe that President Obama was the black president that we all were looking for and needed?
I think that he was the president Now, what you gather from that is, it's all perspective. You know, um, I don't think anybody's going to say that they're totally satisfied with any president.
Huh.
There's negative, there's cons, and there's pros. For
Yeah.
every president through every generation. Was he the president we needed at that time? We needed someone to break that color line. Yeah, he was the Jackie Robinson of the presidency. You
Huh.
know, in that, you know,
Yeah.
uh, so whether he was what everybody was looking for or what everyone, or what we could get, biblically uh, speaking, the first king of Israel was Saul. Uh, and the Bible talks about Saul not being God's choice; he was the people's choice.
Huh.
And Saul, uh, so Saul, being the first king, was chosen by the people because they wanted a king, because they wanted to be like other nations when they had a God.
Yeah.
And when Saul became king, he um, ultimately disappointed God, and God sent Samuel to anoint his next king, who was David,
Huh.
while Saul was still king. And
Wow.
so, um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
so
true.
who's going to be the David after Barack Obama? We don't know. But during his time, I think he did a lot of things that were right. I think that, like I said, he had a meteoric rise. Um, I think that a lot of people on the left, and a lot of people, well, definitely on the left, they were disappointed that he even got elected. He came out of nowhere and basically swooped in at a time um, when the conservatives didn't have a leader. They have a leader because George Bush basically failed,
Huh.
and uh, they didn't have anybody who met. Let me see. They I think they ran McCain after. I think they ran McCain first, right? After
It's either McCain or
they ran
yeah, they
McCain,
ran McCain.
and then they ran
Romney.
Romney after that.
Yeah.
And Barack defeated both of them. But what I understood about Barack Obama, first off being a true African American, American on his mother's side, and of African descent on his father's side. A
Yeah.
lot of people, so he did not experience the generational being born in an African American out of slavery. But I mean, coming from African descent, we all experienced slavery, whether it was on the African side of the transportation, or on you know embarking on America
Yeah.
tour. You know, so we all
I mean,
had a generational experience of slavery. A lot of
right.
people and about Barack Obama was that had to he had to struggle with not having known his father. You know,
Hmm.
uh, being being raised by his grandfather. You know, uh, who was also white. So
Yeah.
so he had struggles with who he was. Later on adopting his African name, his African heritage. Because he was uh, Obama
Barry
for a long
Obama.
Barry Obama for a long time in his life. But people also didn't understand that he came from a moderate uh, 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 political stance.
Hmm.
He wasn't a far left or far right. He was. he was a middle of the road person. Even from my research, even when he was elected as the leader of the Harvard Law, um, he was central. You know,
Huh.
he brought people from both sides, and he attempted to do that in his presidency. But when he was elected
They wasn't
president,
having that.
they were the party of no. They,
They were not having that.
and they started meeting immediately, and whatever he wants, no. Even if it's
No,
no, we're not going to say
no.
yes to him. We want him to fail. And the only way to make him fail is to be opposed to anything that, whether it's medical, whether it was, it's medical policies, it's foreign policies, it's domestic
Yeah,
policies,
it
but
didn't matter.
the answer is no. And I think the downfall of the Democratic Party, the reason why he started out with a majority in the Senate and the House, but uh, midterm, because basically, if you look at this historically, the left does not vote during the midterm elections,
Huh.
and the Republican Party knows that. So it's easy to turn a Democratic House or a Democratic Senate into a Republican House or Senate.
Uh, good strategy.
That's strategy.
It's good strategy. And
So
I've heard so much critique about Obama. And, I've been presented with, evidence of crimes against humanity that happened under his watch. It's interesting how it seems like it all kind of starts with what you feel about the person, because if you love the president, whether it be Barack Obama, or Donald Trump, or anybody else, then if they talk about something terrible that happened under their watch, then it becomes, well, the president doesn't control everything. The president is just, he's the face of the nation. There are other people that make these calls. But then if you don't like them, you hate that person, then it's no, he did it. It was his call, his choice. He decided to do that, and it's interesting how people frame your negative aspects or the negative um, activities in their eyes, based on whether they like you or dislike you, or you're in one party or another.
that is true. You're always gonna. If gas prices go up, it's under your watch. If we get into a war, it's under your watch. So what they try to do is they try to pull from the best. If you're gonna hear a president's State of the Union, he's not gonna say we failed. He's gonna pull out the statistics, that favor his policies. you
Right,
know
right,
and so
yeah,
statistics are really based upon who's giving them. you know
it's true.
and
You
you
don't
have
gotta
to
talk about everything.
you have to look at the economy, and you have to look at everything in you know out of your own perspective. For me, politics is always the lesser of two evils.
Hmm.
And why I say that, and that's how I vote. Why I say that is because if I'm looking at myself, and I'm looking at um and other people might do this the same. I mean, if you're the 1%, you might say, well, I'm going to look at who's going to favor, what's going to help me and benefit me uh, the best. you know
Right.
uh, and my constituents, or my fellow uh, people that are in my boat, as opposed to looking at the whole, what's going to favor humanity.
Yeah.
And I'm more of a what's going to favor humanity person. What's going to favor those who are impoverished, or I may not be on that side of of the economic um, polarization, but most Americans only, I mean, it's been said that we only two paychecks away from from being impoverished, a lot of
Yeah.
times. And a lot of that has to do with, either you living, at your means or above your means, or, I mean, I can't, I can't purchase a house, go to the bank and write a check and purchase a house. So I got a house note, I got a mortgage, or someone has rent, or, we have to eat and have to pay a car note. So what's going
Right.
to be American, you know, more so than uh, what's going to, you know, um, feel feed my dreams of being the next millionaire.
Right. Right. So you would want to make America great again. Is what I'm hearing.
Not
I'm joking.
not not again. It's just let's just make it great. Let's
Let's just
have
make it great.
let's really have a goal of making America great.
Man,
You
I
know,
I I would be all about mag. Mag is the one for me. Call it mag, and I'm
yeah,
with you.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but
Can we
I have
just
one.
start? Not again, because I mean that again. That's perspective. When was it great? At what area, what period of time are you saying, or is that just code for let's make America white again? You
Which
know,
is interesting because I have my guy, South Central conservative, on here. He's a black Republican, and or maybe he considers himself just a black conservative. But we had that conversation about, okay, well, if because he believes in MAGA strongly, and
hmm
so my question obviously was that, okay, well, if you believe in it and you want to make it that again, then give me the framework of when it was. And
right,
I recall, we had a long dialogue about it, but one thing that came out with him and my other guy, Dub City, who was also a little more right leaning, is they said it's unfair when people say it that way and try to turn it into a time. And I said, well, when you say the word again,
right,
that denotes time.
absolutely,
That's not something that we're just kind of projecting onto you and trying to force a slavery conversation or anything of that nature. It's in the statement that was created. No different than what they did with Black Lives Matter. It's like they turned that into, you're saying Black lives only matter. Well, we didn't say that. No one has ever said that. No one that ever believed in BLM felt that way. So it's like, but that's always the pushback, is you're saying you want to make it something again, but you're also saying there wasn't a time where it was great. And the long and short of the story is, it felt like what he's trying to say is they want America to take the again is America taking the best parts for each group of its history and somehow creating that thing. And I told him that's literally impossible, because the way America was built, one person had their greatest moment because you had your worst. And so if in the recreation of it, if I can't have you at your worst, I can't do my best anymore.
right. You know, America has a strong history, but yeah, also America is young in the
Very.
sense talk about dynasties and things of that nature. Just in history. We're talking 200 plus years as
Yeah.
opposed to China's 5,000 years and or 2,000, whoever. I mean, just the European. Just say that continent. That is comprised of Europe and
Yeah.
Asia and Africa. But America, in that sense, is a young uh, toddler. In that sense. Now it's come to great economic power.
Oh, incredible.
You know,
Which has led to great military power.
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and yeah, if you want to look at the Roman Empire and things of that nature, you know, but you know, but because it's been like 200 years, when you divide it up, you know, it's kind of like you have to, you know, remember stop motion
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah. Yeah, like Gumby.
That's America.
Mm,
That's America.
that's interesting.
Look,
Ex-
I
Go
mean, so
deeper.
you
Go
have an art.
deeper with that.
So you remember how we used to make the little books, and you make that little stick person or the animation and things, and then you flip it through real quick.
Yep. Yep.
That's America, you know. But
Okay.
so what I'm getting to, James, is that
Mhm.
America has done a lot in that period of time, you know, less than 300-year period of time, and it's been a lot of atrocities, you know. Um, there's been a lot of economic, you know, gain, uh, but you can't get over in 300 a period of 300 times. Stop asking Black people to get over slavery, because America is this young, and most of its time was dealt in slavery.
That's true. That's
It was
true.
built on slavery,
Yeah.
all the way up through Jim Crow laws that still belittled another race.
Right.
So you can't take the 60 years um, from from Jim Crow or the Civil Rights Act and forget about America's been here since the 1600s, and there
Hmm.
was slavery that whole time.
Yeah.
You know, that's just one. That's just one. You know.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's a great point. My episode with Chris, the candle maker, we had a deep conversation about reparations, and that's some of the things that we kind of touched on is how long Black people suffered in this country in comparison to how long some of the um, other groups might have suffered and dealt with the aftermath of suffering, and they're getting reparations from America and have been for decades already. Yet the group that suffered the most, that continues to still feel the blunt of it in different moments that happen, uh, we are still denied. It's still a conversation of you know excuses in so many words. And so he actually had a great a great breakdown of how, like, he basically studied how these other cultures did it, how they got America to finally start paying reparations to their group of people, and he showed what Black people are doing wrong, and maybe what we could change in that conversation to, not necessarily that you're going to guarantee that you're going to get it, because the way things go, we'll probably never get that, but how to make it more achievable potentially. I thought it was very interesting. I'll bring him on with you too, so you can hear it. I love to hear your response to his approach.
Yeah, I'd like to know what it is that he's, you know, I mean, what his ideas are, you know, myself. You know, we're not the only ones looking towards reparations being paid out, you know, to those who are enslaved. I mean, you have people in the Caribbean, and you know, who were just as impoverished, and I mean, just as enslaved people. You know, they're looking for reparations. People in Britain, um,
Yeah,
in the UK, and shoot, I mean France, and you know, I mean, it's I mean, reparations is something that could do could do economically good, but it's more important is what will you do with the money?
Right.
As,
And that was a big part of his study was he didn't just look at how they got it, he looked at what they did with it. And specifically he talked about like the Koreans, how they took their reparations, they formed their own groups, if you will, and organizations that then were connected with their banks, Korean banks, here on American soil, and in, they give out business loans to their people, but they have a specific criteria that you have to meet before that money will be loaned out. There are very flexible and easy terms in repaying that, and you have to go into one of the business structures that they've already pre-chosen that they know will get a profit and they'll be able to get the money back. So that's why you see a lot of nail salons owned by Koreans. That's why you see a lot of beauty supply stores owned by Koreans. That's why you see a lot of these little convenience stores owned by Koreans, because those are a part of that grouping of you can have this business loan, but it has to be for one of these businesses. And I was like, that was genius because it, number one, in so many words, almost guarantees you get your money back. It keeps the money circulating. It generates new money. It buys land. I thought it was great because it wasn't the obvious worry of, oh, we got reparations and now we distribute all these checks. What is everybody going to do with it? Like, no, this money is now housed in their banks and given specifically to their people, but to only do the right things with it. And they have to prove that they are going to do those things, whether it be, through, I don't know what their criteria is, whether it be an education or accreditations or whatever, but they got it figured out.
well, I mean, it's good to have people who have a plan, at the helm of whatever it is that you're trying to create with the wealth, because
Right.
wealth can be long term, or wealth can be generational. And I think that a lot of us are only now, getting a getting a handle on what generational wealth is. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Eat into the next generation. How do we prepare them? And how do we take our legacy? A lot of us, you know, uh, we don't have living trust. We don't. So this is what I'm finding out. If you don't have a living trust, and I'm only finding this because I'm experiencing this right now. I recently lost my mother, um, and
God bless.
father is let's face it, my father's 87 years old, and being transparent, he has Alzheimer's and he's blind, and we're just uh, trying to take care of him. I just had the courts appoint me uh, as conservator for my dad, but
Huh.
still, at the same time, they died without a living trust or a will. Now,
Yeah.
as a people, this happens over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So your home goes into probate,
Right.
and either you're going to come out on the side where, okay, after the law gets finished with it and the creditors, get paid and everything, you're going to have little or nothing left, or you're going to have nothing left because you didn't pursue it, or someone
Yeah.
comes with a tax lien or something of that nature and takes up the property, so it doesn't stay in the family. So, learn. If you're on this podcast, learn about having the will and having a living trust, you know,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and create wealth, for the next generation. Uh,
Absolutely.
that's important. My wife and I just recently had a living trust done to make sure that, uh, you know, that we create something, for the future generation.
Yeah.
But we've been cheated out of our money and cheated out of our uh, property for a long time, and ignorance is really no excuse. You know, if we are going to create something, reparations or not, you know, you're
Yeah,
going to create some generational wealth. You have to start now and not later. You know,
that's
uh,
true.
that's and I think that's the main thing. Part of and going back to legacy, you know, I mean, legacy that I leave is not in dollars and cents. You know, legacy I'm leaving to my children is in love and preparation. You know, for for them to be committed, be assets, you know, to the life, to their family, and to the communities, and not liabilities. You know,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
what that's one of the main focuses that I have, you know, in life, is to make sure that, you know, they know their value, they know their worth. You know,
yeah. Because the new generation, I do believe that through social media, it's greatly affected the view of their worth. The comparative nature of the day to day life of the new generation is like it's mind blowing. Matter of fact, with the new generation, I've heard this even more so because I heard it before this generation, but this push towards less religious and more spiritual. You hear that a lot. Like, I'm not religious. I ain't a religious person. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious.
and what
To,
is that?
to
What
and that's
what
what I'm going to ask you. In your opinion, is there a difference in being religious and being spiritual?
um there's a difference between being moral and immoral. You know what I'm saying? I think that uh how someone labels themselves spiritual or religious, you know, has to do with what you're committed to.
Very
What are
much.
you what are you committed to?
Right.
Really, a lot of it has to do with faith. You know, in I believe faith in God. People say, well, there's many gods, there's many different faiths. That is true, but my perspective is only uh, the God that I know. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't studied other religions. I believe that if you're going to be committed, especially if you're going to be a Christian, you have to understand what it is that you are committing yourself to. You believe in the tenets of Christianity. You believe in faith in God, um, and salvation through Jesus Christ, His resurrection. You know, his birth, burial, and resurrection. You know that unites us with God. God becomes our Father, and Jesus Christ is our joint heir. You know, and our inheritance is that of, you know, of an afterlife, that we are one with God.
Yeah.
You know? So those are for me, those are the tenets of Christianity. That's what I believe in. I believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I believe that you only come to those beliefs if the Holy Spirit uh, pricks your heart. So people who say, I don't believe in Jesus, but have you given them a chance? Have you given them the opportunity? Have you, have you um, looked into, what Christianity entails? And for me, and you,
Yeah.
as James, you grew up in, in a faith-based home, but, we talk about, Christianity being a relationship and not a religion, you know, and our
Yeah.
relationship is with God through Jesus Christ. So
Absolutely.
people who are spiritual, say I'm spiritual, whether they say, well, I believe in the universe, or I mean, what are you basing that on? What's your authenticity? You know,
Mm.
and with Christianity, there has to be an authentic Christianity has to do with, believing that the Bible is the word of God, not believing that the Bible is the word of God, and that uh, it was revealed through the writers, and then and through the life of Christ, you know, and it's um, and when you embrace it, you become one with God through the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
you know. So when you say, "Oh, I believe in the universe," I mean, is that something that you heard one day and say, "Oh yeah, that sounds good,"
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
this-
Right.
or of beliefs out there? But is there something that you have embraced
Right.
and are really, willing to live and die for? You know,
Right. And
so
I don't know if that happens in, I don't know if the people say that in other countries. I know, it's more of an American thing that I've heard, more and more over time. But with that, do you feel like,
but that's our perspective, right? I mean,
I mean, it really is.
we can only talk about that which we know, as I said before, I'm no expert in anything. I'm a lifelong learner, you know.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure I think that the embracing of the universe is universal.
Do you think that their views on it would be different if they still had prayer in schools?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I talked about that because we talked about, some of the subjects that we might touch on, but I never had prayer in school in the in Richmond Unified School District. I don't remember there being prayer in school. I
Mhm.
remember having some teachers who time. That's our time.
No, you good.
I remember having some teachers, who were religious. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm,
I remember here in the Richmond Unified School District that I grew up in, having prayer in school. Now, my wife Sandra says that she remembers having prayer in school, and she grew up in, I think she was in Oakland or Berkeley. I tease her about because she went to parochial school, but she said when she went to public school, she says she remembered having prayer in school. So I don't know what the impact on America, whether they had prayer in school in the Midwest, whether they had prayer in school, in the far west, I mean the far east or far east, I mean the East Coast, or California,
yeah.
I, when I was growing up, I don't remember having prayer in school, but I think that more so prayer in the household
Hmm.
has a greater impact. When we forget, you know, uh, in our Christian faith, in Black Baptist faith, we talk about, not just um, um, who you are, but whose you are. That we
Yeah.
belong to, you know. And
Yeah.
when the community, when that leaves the house, then you get issues.
Hmm.
It's how you react or are proactive, you know, that impacts your life and those who are around you. Because I believe we want to say spirituality um, impacts others around us. You know,
Yeah.
I have um, a mentoring program that God gave to me. I say it was God who gave it to me because literally I woke up at night and recognized, what this acronym for Giants was. And
Giants, like the San Francisco Giants.
not San Francisco Giants, but Giants Inc., which is an acronym for Gentlemen of Integrity, aspiring to be noble, transformed, and successful. And that is based upon what I've experienced, in both my secular working with youth and my ministry as a youth minister working with young people. But I was asking God, where my greatest impact going to be?
Yeah.
And um, how do I put it into terminology that can be understood both by those who would be part of the Giants, mentoring program, and also by the world that would hopefully embrace, the Giants mentoring concept.
Yeah.
and that's what God gave to me. And when we talk about, we're talking about, for me, gentleman never looks down on a person unless they're helping them up. You know, um,
Awesome.
integrity has to do with doing the right thing even though no one's looking.
That's a fact. That's a
Uh,
fact.
aspirations for you know as a child, you have aspirations. You have kids who want to be, whether they want to be a great athlete or they want to be a great mathematician or a lawyer. It's an aspire. It's something lofty to aspire to. you know Nobility for me is a big one, because nobility for me has to do with your inheritance. You are an heir to the throne. And in the case of giants, it's about being an heir of God and a joint heir with Jesus Christ.
Mm.
So God is our Father, therefore we are heirs of God. And that's where our nobility comes from. It has nothing to do with a hierarchy. It has nothing to do with a magistrate or a monarchy or anything like that. But once we learn whose we are, then that impacts what we do. We don't want to bring shame to our Father,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. And so, nobility, and then, transformation, the T in giant, transformation has to do with a metamorphosis that occurs in your life.
Mm.
You know, we
That's a
talk
good one.
about metamorphosis being a caterpillar to a butterfly. What's your butterfly moment? What's your cocoon moment?
It's a cool moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Into, what is our transformation? And not only are we being transformed, but we are able to transform. We're able to transform our families. We're able to transform our communities. We're able to transform others by our impact. And success simply has to do with long-term, short-term, and long-term goals in life.
Yeah.
And to try to teach that to a young person, and for them to embrace that, and for them, it means that they have to be a lifelong learner. And not only that, but as we talked about, each one reach one, but giants beget giants. So, on a peer learning and peer mentoring term, they can teach their own peers the same terminology and the same impact and characteristics. You know,
Yeah.
it all begins, and like I said, even with religion, it begins in the home. It doesn't. I don't think it begins in school.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the idea of it, from what it felt like, number one, this is part of the MAGA idea, is that America used to be more of a Christian, Protestant, country, a God fearing
That
country.
embrace slavery.
Right. We're not even gonna go and we'll do that another time. But
Yeah,
when they talked about, or not they, but when people talk about um, prayer being in schools, in so many words, they're saying religion being in schools, and the idea, it sounds as though, maybe a later guest will correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as though the idea was, if somehow it didn't make its way into your ears at home, well, then while school is teaching you reading and arithmetic and all the other hardcore lessons that you need to learn to prepare you for life, we will also teach you the greatest foundation that you need to take you through life. It doesn't negate what should have happened at home, but just like you should have learned to read at home, or you should have learned what 1 + 1 at home, but uh, it doesn't always happen. And I mean, I guess the question kind of is trying to figure out this whole idea of
yeah,
less religion or spiritual awakening. Where did it come from, and what kind of curves it to get it back to God? You know what I mean? Where he's the
yeah.
focus.
What I think, James, is that, I mean, yeah, school is definitely an extension of the home, But when you had educators, most of the time, especially in rural America, you have farmers. The father, they wanted, it was about farming, from sun up to sundown, or before the sun got up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
educated. They may not have known, 1+1. They knew how to get their crops to the market and get paid for it. Whether they were getting a
Right.
share for their harvest, I think the people who were buying from them, set the, they set the amount that they were going to get paid for. And oftentimes, often the farmer is the one that got cheated.
True.
He didn't get a fair market price for his product,
Right.
or his
Not at all.
produce. So you send your children to school. Hopefully, they'll learn. They'll come back to the farm and they'll help you manage your farm better. Or they'll go out into the world and they'll make something of themselves. That's
Yeah.
that's what father's dream is always to, make sure that their children do better than they did.
Yeah. Of course. Absolutely.
Now, sending them to church, or sending them to, or prayer being in school, how much time, because I didn't grow up, like I said, in that. If you're thinking that well, God is going to watch over them, while God watches over us everywhere, uh,
Everywhere.
whether or not, I don't know how much time was devoted to prayer in school, and whether or not they had Bible study in school, things of that nature, Um, but Bible study helps, if you are going to um, have a relationship. And we need to focus on the relationship, because the vertical relationship with God is what impacts our horizontal relationship with others. And so, when you look about society and whether or not, whether what that's coming from, Bull Connor was, right?
Bull
Yeah,
Connor?
yeah, that word, that name. Well,
No.
so Bull Connor was one of the one of the officers who was noted for having turned fire hoses and fire hoses on protesters,
Hmm.
and uh, and sicking dogs on protesters and things like that. He was a Sunday school teacher.
Wow.
So your
Wow.
perspective on Bible. Remember, these were, this was Southern Bible toting, Bible spouting people who put on hoods,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That's
Pretty sure
true.
pastors that were part of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So,
And and probably thought it just, furthered their call. They didn't look at it in any bad way. They didn't. There was no
right,
issue for them at all.
right. So, saying that, our perspective on God, I don't know what happened.
I was pulling up. Uh,
I'm just saying, you have to go a lot deeper in your in your relationship with God,
oh,
to get your perspective. You get your perspective on who God truly is. Is he
yeah.
a God of people, for all time, or is he a God of one people, you know, for their purposes?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Christ,
But
when
I,
Christ
I
died for all of our sin, not y'all sin, but all of our sin.
yeah. And man, I really like that the Giants program. I know you didn't ask me, but just because I know you're in the Bay Area and to call the Giants, and that's such a great acronym that I honestly feel like, whether it's directly related in some type of partnership, or just kind of distantly associated by colors or whatnot, that's kind of a cool branding, especially for kids, is to brand it to look like the San Francisco Giants, like the baseball uniforms. I feel like when you start doing the programs and you have the shirts and the gear, I feel like that's a cool branding idea, is to make it look kind of like the San Francisco Giants, but these are different Giants. You know what I mean? These Giants in the world are going to do more than any baseball game could ever do. These young gentlemen.
My sons would probably concur with you, being Bay Area, and I think I think that's generational, because for me, the Giants weren't champions. They were in the Bay Area for 50 years before before they were champions. I grew up with the Oakland A's. I'm from the East Bay, So
I mean, if they was called the A's, I'd be with you. If they had,
I can't. I can't subscribe to to that Giants, but I mean, what we do have is the coat of arms, though. Coat of arms that talks about strength and integrity and things of that nature. I'll share that with you at another time, but it's more the concept, than um, and when we come up with a logo, I mean, I do actually have logos, but
yeah, let us know. We'll hopefully help you get the word out. Like I was telling you, next Tuesday I have Kier coming on, who has a barbershop, and he also does mentoring. And so I want to get you guys connected. Like I said, both in the Bay Area, both focused heavily on the youth and trying to pour into them. And there's one thing that me and him have talked about, you and I have talked about, and both of your missions are helping to aid in this. But we know that the prison population has way too many of us. It has way too many of men and women that look like our communities. And so the things that you're doing and the things that he's doing, I feel like you're trying to make sure that the next generation lessens that population. So in your opinion, along with having parents send their kids or kids being involved in programs like Giants, what should we be doing to make sure that this travesty ends soon?
I think the only thing that that we can do as is operate, as a community. I think too many people operate individually, to try to impact, and that's like with getting one drop of water in the bucket, But when we operate as a community, we can feel faster. Remember the old well, of course we have fire hydrants and fire hose, things like that, to help put fires out, right?
Yeah,
And you used to have bucket brigade, I mean, the one person filling the bucket, by the time they get to the house, it's just a drip in the pot,
right.
but it's still working as a team, as opposed to one person filling the bucket up and then trying to, throw it on the fire. We have a fire in this country, My wife and two of my sons, both work in the California corrections division. My wife as an administrator, and my two sons, one as a probate, Brandon as a parole agent, and Michael as a corrections officer in San Quentin.
I gotta get him on the show.
They see, yeah, definitely. They see the population. A lot of it has to do with attitude, but the attitude is grown from something. It's grown from our communities, and whether people want to believe that there's a systemic racism, that plays a part in, in choices that people make in life or not, choice. People are making our people, young black people, are making wrong choices. I mean, we literally have generations who are sharing prisons, fathers and sons in the same prison. You know,
Mm.
so when the community is impacted by economic disparity and people turn to crime, and then you're not represented well you're not getting due process,
Yeah.
you know, uh, then that entail, makes the prison population grow with one culture over one over, you know. So
Right.
it all is impacted. It all, we have to start somewhere. Legislation, um, economic growth, opportunities,
Mm.
education, all working together, because
Right.
there's a pipeline from ghetto poverty to the prison.
Oh yeah.
But when when you're railroad people, when you're not giving them their due process, when you're assigning uh, public defenders and you're making deals and you're telling people they need to plea bargain because they don't know what the rights are,
Right.
of
Right.
course you're gonna fill the prison. Now you got not just government run prisons, but you have private prisons.
A lot of
It's
money.
off of your labor.
A lot of money.
A lot of money being made off of a lot of people,
Yep.
that look like you and I, uh,
Uh-huh.
and not getting an honest day's wage for an honest day's work, and getting their rights stricken away from them, and all of that.
The new slave.
That's it.
The new slave.
You said it. I didn't. I bought good. So there. But yeah, we all have to do our part. We can't just talk it. We have to walk it.
Yeah.
And so
All right, brother Eric, we're gonna end with this. Now, this I did not prep you for, so we're gonna see how we do. But I like to do top fives here on the show. We've done top five R&B groups. We've done top five funk bands. We've done top five rap artists, female rap artists, rap groups. I mean, top five comedy movies. I've done them all. So
give me a simple one now. Don't have me wrecking my brain.
I think I believe, because I know you are a man that has a great sense of humor as well. So I think you'll be good with this one. I need your top five stand-up comedians of all time.
Okay. It's interesting. I saw something on Facebook recently, and they had a group, and then they said, rank your top three or what have you. And it wasn't, first off, it wasn't enough. It didn't, for me, give credence to some of the, in my generation and beyond, some of the originators, you know,
Yeah.
um, and some people that impacted, comedy for me. Uh, so growing up, we had LPs. Families would get the families, the kids way, but grown ups in the front room listening to Richard Pryor talking about Mudbone and all of that. Richard Pryor was hilarious. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
So you got Richard number one.
Number one.
Number one. I love it.
Okay, so I have to go get about controversy, impacted generations. Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby.
I'm with you.
He had the Cosby Kids. He had, yeah, um, the Cosby Show. You know, we watched
Tons of
those,
movies.
watched them grow up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fat
and
Albert.
I laughed with my great niece the other day. We watched Saturday Night, Saturday Night, Uptown Saturday. Go back in your catalog, James, and see Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier.
Oh,
Have you
I
ever
love.
seen?
Yes,
Oh yeah,
classic.
a piece of the action. Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. You know,
Yeah, man, they're a great duo in that movie. Great
great.
duo.
So Bill Cosby has to be number two. You
Number
know,
7. Okay.
um, oh man, there's so many good ones, man. But you know, right now, I mean, he's talented. He has his hands in everything. I gotta go with Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey he's a master at quick wit. You
Yeah.
know, um, kings of comedy. You know, Steve Harvey show. My wife and I, before we go to bed every night, we go to bed with the television watching us. But because of the draining that society does on you and life itself, we have to go to bed with some laughter.
Absolutely. Gotta
So
laugh. Go to
we'll
bed smiling.
we'll put the Steve Harvey show on and we'll just laugh. You know we love is in living color and even if you haven't seen the Carmichaels with Gerard Carmichael, it's hilarious.
Hmm.
Because it's so politically charged.
Yeah. Yeah.
That that particular show has on it four stand-up comedians.
Hmm.
So you have
Yeah.
Gerard,
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
you have Carmichael, you have
Right.
Lorraine, you have um, David Allen Greer, and
Right.
Tiffany Haddish, all
Oh.
in the cast. You know,
Yep. Yep.
so but um, going back to my list, man, I will laugh at Kevin Hart. As a comedian, you gotta be able to laugh at yourself. You know,
Yes. Yes.
and
This is true.
Kevin does short jokes more than anybody else, man.
Oh,
And
that's. This is true. This is true.
he's hilarious. He is
He
hilarious.
really is. He really is.
Mhm.
Like
And so,
he's like effortless. He's one of those guys that's so effortlessly hilarious that he comes across like it's just easy to do.
yeah, yeah,
That's one
yeah,
thing I noticed about Kevin. Kevin will make you think that standing in a Philadelphia stadium in front of 60,000 people is a nonchalant, easy evening out. Like it's not
it's
that easy.
ridiculous. I mean, I think, I mean, he's one of the few people that I will have a heart attack. I have to watch. I have to take my blood pressure watching Kevin. Hard to catch my breath. He's that funny, you know.
All right.
But
So we got Richard Pryor number 1. We got Bill Cosby number 2. We got Steve Harvey at number 3. We got Kevin Hart at number 4. Who rounds out the list? Number 5.
it's got to be Sinbad.
Sinbad.
Got to be
Oh my goodness. I love Sinbad.
Sinbad. It's
He's
hilarious.
so underrated, man. I feel like he doesn't
Yeah,
make it to enough top 5, top 10 greatest comedians. He don't make it to enough lists.
yeah, you gotta put Sinbad in there. If anybody hasn't seen Sinbad, you just gotta watch
Oh
his
man.
Sinbad to tell you because they killed him on Wikipedia.
They did. They
Yeah,
did.
he had a whole routine about how they killed him off. He said, "I didn't stay dead long enough." He
Right,
said,
right.
"I could have came back as Vin Diesel."
Yo, Sinbad is a goat. He is like one of the best
I
ever.
I
Ever.
probably seen him 3 or 4 times live. You know.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, but yeah, and that's based on my experience. And there's
Yeah.
so many there. There's so many more.
That's a respectable list, man.
But
That's some heavy hitters.
yeah, and if you ever, yeah, I mean, one of the funniest movies that I love to laugh at has stand-up comics in it, and that is um, um, Roscoe Roscoe Brown. The Roscoe Brown. What is it? With Martin?
You talking about Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins?
Oh, Roscoe what?
Jenkins.
Jenkins. Roscoe Jenkins.
Yes.
Monique. Mike Epps. Martin Lawrence. Cedric the Entertainer. Hilarious.
Hilarious. And I love that you brought it up because it's such a slept on movie. I was just telling my cousin who I had on, I believe episode 17 or 16, but I had him on. We were talking about that because I gave him top 5 comedy movies of all time. He put Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins in the top 5, and I was telling him I have it in my iTunes playlist. I watch it all the time.
Oh yeah, you gotta watch it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That movie is yes. If you love comedy, you'll laugh from top to bottom.
Non-stop.
Well, Brother Eric, it has been a great time with you, sir. Thank you for all of your knowledge, experience, opinions, your wisdom. You've done a lot. We get it. You're not an expert. Most of us aren't, but you are an expert at what Eric Clay knows, what Eric Clay has experienced, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. The last thing I need to ask is, I'm pretty sure there are going to be parents or teenagers or other leaders that watch this and are interested in your Giants program. Do you already have a way for people to contact you or to get in touch with the Giants organization?
Well, they can contact me at my email. I've because my Giants Inc. My copyright and everything had run out on that, and
Okay. What's the email?
But you can contact me at HEIRIC 2 at gmail.com.
All right. I will put that in the chat. I mean, not in the chat, in the show description for everyone. So anyone that wants to reach out and contact Brother Clay, they will be able to. Sir, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. I appreciate you. Please come back and we'll have some more great discussions.
And I appreciate you and what you're doing. And hopefully, this podcast blow up and blow off through the roof. So God bless you, James, nephew.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. All right, y'all. That has been episode 20 of the Pod is Good podcast. We are here to entertain and empower. I hope that you all got something out of it. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to the show. Please share the broadcast. Next time you see it come up, each one teach one. Iron sharpens iron. We will get better together, not apart. We'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.
Peace.